One purchase can make or break your entire boating experience. The outboard motor. Get it right, and you get years of reliable starts, strong performance, and fewer expensive surprises. Get it wrong, and you could be facing five-figure repairs and weekends stranded at the dock. In 2026, the choices are bigger and more confusing than ever. Today, we're ranking the 3 worst and 4 best outboards you can actually buy. The 3 worst outboard motors. Number 3 worst. Mercury Avatar electric line. Every boat show in the last 2 years has had at least one booth pushing electric outboards as the future of boating. Mercury jumped in with the Avatar series, starting with the 7.5E in 2023 and adding the 20E and 35E in 2024. The pitch sounds great. Silent running, 0 emissions, no winterizing, no fuel costs. The reality is something else entirely. The Avatar 7.5E produces roughly 3.5 horsepower equivalent. The 20E and 35E sound bigger, but they deliver around 5 horsepower equivalent. That is not a typo. A motor marketed as a 35 delivers the thrust equivalent of a small gas kicker. For comparison, a basic Tohatsu 6 horsepower 4-stroke costs about $1,800 and will push a 12-foot tender all day on a single tank. The Avatar 7.5E costs over $3,500 with the battery and gives you roughly an hour of usable range at cruising speed. When that battery dies, you are done. There is no jerry can solution. The range limitation is not a minor inconvenience. It fundamentally changes how you use the motor. Every trip becomes a math problem. Can I get there and back on this charge? What if the current picks up? What if I need to fight a headwind coming home? Gas boaters have dealt with fuel planning for decades, but the margin for error on electric is razor thin. A gas outboard at half tank still has miles of range. An electric battery at 50% might leave you paddling. Then there is the infrastructure problem. Charging at the dock requires shore power, and not every marina slip has a 120-volt outlet within reach. Even when power is available, charging takes hours, not minutes, so you cannot simply plug in for 10 minutes while grabbing lunch and come back with a full battery. That becomes a real limitation during a vacation week when you are spending back-to-back days on the water. After a long day of cruising, you need to plug in and hope the battery has enough time to recharge overnight. If the charging cycle is interrupted, the weather forces an early departure, or you simply use more energy than expected, you may start the second morning with a partially charged battery and a much shorter usable range. For tender duty on a sailboat, for trolling on a quiet lake, or for waterways that ban combustion engines, electric has its place. That place is narrow and specific. Mercury is selling the Avatar as if it is ready to replace your gas kicker. It is not. Not at this price, not at this range, and not with this charging infrastructure. In 5 years, this conversation may be different. Right now, you are paying a premium to be a beta tester. The Avatar is a disappointment, not because the technology is bad. It is a disappointment because the marketing has outrun the engineering by about a decade. So what happens when the engineering is actually impressive, but the execution creates a different set of problems? Now watch what happens next. Number 2. Worst. Suzuki DF350A. On paper, the Suzuki DF350A looked like a game changer when it launched. A 4.4-liter V6 producing 350 horsepower with a contra-rotating dual-prop system, 2 propellers spinning in opposite directions, eliminating torque steer and delivering grip that a single prop cannot match. Suzuki was first to market with this concept on an outboard, and the boating world paid attention. The early reality was brutal. Owners of 2017 through 2019 models reported cracked engine blocks, lower unit failures with metal shavings contaminating the gear case, and water intrusion past faulty seals under the water pump housing. These were not isolated incidents. Forum threads on the Hull Truth and iFish filled with catastrophic failure reports, some at fewer than 500 hours. One owner of twin 2018 units on an Albury Brothers 33 described replacing both engine blocks and both lower units on motors that never saw more than 4,500 RPM. Suzuki revised the seals and addressed the block issues in later production runs, and the DF350A from 2021 onward is a substantially better motor. But here is the problem for a 2026 buyer. Used DF350A motors from those early years are still circulating on the second-hand market, and they can look like incredible bargains compared with newer models. The lower price is not necessarily a gift. Sellers know these engines have a complicated history, and some buyers may not realize what they are looking at. Before buying one, you need to check the engine's serial number, confirm the production range, and verify exactly which revisions have been performed. A motor can look clean, run smoothly on a short test, and still carry problems that only become obvious after hours of use. Skip that verification, and the bargain sitting on the back of the boat could turn into a very expensive ticking time bomb on your transom. Even setting aside the early production problems, the dual prop system creates a unique ownership headache. Your propeller options are limited to Suzuki's own contra-rotating sets. You cannot walk into any prop shop and pick from 20 options like you can with a conventional single-prop outboard. If you damage a prop offshore, you are not borrowing a spare from the boat next to you. The props are expensive, proprietary, and not always in stock. The DF350A also weighs 727 pounds, which is manageable, but the dual-prop lower unit sits deeper in the water than a conventional gear case. In shallow coastal waters, that extra draft matters. Owners running in the Florida Keys or Chesapeake Flats have learned this the hard way. The DF350A is not a bad motor in its current form, but the early production history, the proprietary prop ecosystem, and the draft penalty make it a motor you need to approach with your eyes wide open and your mechanic on speed dial. Now, from a motor that costs too much to maintain to a motor that costs too much to exist.
Before we continue, there's a reason half of this is knowledge a shop would rather keep on the clock at 100 an hour. The complete field archive goes where this channel can't. The full playbook, uncut. The habits that keep an outboard running 30 years, and the thousands they save you. The code on your screen gets you in. Scan it, and let's get back to the motor.
And that leads us directly to the next example. Number 1 worst. Mercury V12 Verado 600. The Mercury V12 Verado 600 is the most powerful production outboard motor ever made. A 7.6-liter V12 producing 600 horsepower with a steerable gear case that rotates independently from the engine body. It has a 2-speed automatic transmission. It runs on 87-octane fuel. It produces 150 amps of charging power. On a spec sheet, it is engineering art. In a boat owner's bank account, it is a controlled demolition. A single V12 Verado 600 retails for approximately $77,000 before rigging, installation, and controls. Most boats large enough to make use of this motor need at least 2, which means you are starting at roughly $154,000 just for propulsion before you even add the boat underneath it. Once you factor in the rigging, steering systems, controls, installation labor, and other components needed to make those engines work together, the real cost climbs even higher. And if you step up to a triple installation, you are looking at more than $230,000 in engines alone. At that point, you are no longer talking about an expensive upgrade. You are talking about an investment that can rival the price of a house in some parts of the country. But the price is only the beginning of the cost conversation. The V12 Verado is the most complex outboard motor ever produced. The independently articulating gear case is a mechanical marvel, but it introduces failure points that conventional outboards do not have. Multiple owners have reported steering housing seal failures and persistent oil leaks that require extended troubleshooting. On a normal outboard, an oil leak is a gasket job. On the V12, diagnosing the source can require factory-trained technicians with diagnostic equipment that your local marina does not own. That service network limitation is the real killer. You cannot take this motor to the guy who has been working on your Yamahas for 15 years. V12 Verado repairs require Mercury-certified technicians with specialized training and tools. If you boat in a major coastal market, you might have access to one of these shops. If you boat anywhere remote, and remote is where a lot of serious boaters want to be, you are trailering your vessel or paying for a mobile tech to fly in. The motor weighs 1,260 pounds. That is not just heavy for an outboard. That is heavier than some small cars. And all of that mass is hanging off the back of the boat, where it has an immediate effect on how the hull sits and handles. The extra weight can change the boat's balance, increase stern squat, and affect acceleration, fuel economy, and overall running attitude. It also places greater structural demands on the transom, mounting hardware, and surrounding hull structure, which means the boat has to be specifically designed and reinforced to handle it. Then there is the trailer to consider, because the additional engine weight adds to the total towing load. In practical terms, this is not an outboard you can simply bolt onto any large boat. It limits which hulls can safely and effectively run the motor in the first place. The V12 Verado 600 is built for a specific buyer, someone with a 40-foot-plus center console, a six-figure engine budget, and a home port near a premium Mercury dealer. For that buyer, it might make sense. For everyone else asking the question, it is the outboard equivalent of buying a Formula One car for your daily commute. Incredible machine, wrong application. The 4 best outboard motors. That is enough about what to avoid. Here is where the outboard market genuinely delivers. Number 4. Best. Honda BF350 V8. Honda has been making outboard motors since 1964, but for most of that history, they have been the quiet brand. Never the loudest at boat shows, never the one your buddy brags about at the dock. The BF350 is the motor that deserves to change that reputation. This is a 5.0-liter V8 producing 350 horsepower, and the headline feature is what fuel it burns. The BF350 runs on regular 86-octane gas. Not premium, not 89, regular pump gas. If you run a boat that burns 50 or more gallons per trip, the savings add up to thousands of dollars per season. No other motor in this horsepower class can make that claim. Honda's Blast system, boosted low-speed torque, advances ignition timing during initial acceleration to get heavy boats on plane faster without needing to spin the engine to high RPM. The VTEC variable valve timing, borrowed directly from Honda's automotive engineering, adjusts valve lift and duration across the power band. The result is smooth power delivery from idle to wide-open throttle, with fuel efficiency that stays competitive across the entire RPM range. Noise is where the BF350 separates itself. Honda 4-strokes have always been quiet, but the V8 takes it further. At cruising speed, conversations happen in a normal speaking voice. No shouting, no headsets. For pontoon owners, family cruisers, and anyone who values comfort over all-out speed, this matters more than peak horsepower numbers. The trade-off is weight. At over 700 pounds, the BF350 is heavier than some competitors in this class. And Honda's marine dealer network, while growing, still has gaps compared to Yamaha or Mercury. Finding a Honda-certified marine mechanic in every harbor town is not guaranteed. But the motor itself is built to need the mechanic less often, and that might be the better trade. Speaking of fuel efficiency, there is another motor that takes that idea even further with a completely different approach. Coming in next is something many people overlook. Number 3 best. Suzuki DF300B. The Suzuki DF300B shares its 4.4-liter V6 DNA with the DF350A we just criticized, but it is a fundamentally different ownership experience. Detuned to 300 horsepower and refined through multiple production revisions, the DF300B is the motor that proves Suzuki learned from its mistakes and came back stronger. The contra-rotating dual-prop system, which created headaches on the overstressed DF350A, works beautifully at the DF300B's power level. The engine is not being pushed to its limits. It is operating comfortably within its design envelope. Owners with over 700 hours report zero mechanical issues. The dual-prop setup eliminates torque steer entirely, which means single-engine boats track straight without constant steering correction. The whole shot on heavy boats is dramatically better than any single-prop 300 in the class. Fuel economy is where the DF300B earns its place on this list. It runs on 89-octane fuel, not premium. Owners consistently report cruise fuel burn between 2.8 and 3.2 miles per gallon, depending on load and hull design. For an offshore fishing boat burning a full day's worth of fuel, Those numbers translate to real money saved over a season. The fly-by-wire throttle controls are responsive and precise, giving you much finer control over engine speed and throttle input than a traditional mechanical setup. Low-speed maneuvering in tight marina spaces is noticeably easier with the dual-prop setup because the counter-rotating propellers maintain strong bite in both forward and reverse, without the same tendency to cavitate or lose grip. That extra control becomes especially valuable when the wind is pushing the boat sideways, or you are trying to line up with a narrow slip surrounded by other expensive boats. Instead of making large throttle corrections and hoping the boat responds, you can make small, deliberate adjustments and keep the hull exactly where you want it. Backing into a slip becomes something you do with confidence rather than prayer. Suzuki revised the lower unit seals after the problems that plagued the DF350A, and units made after 2021 have been clean. But do your due diligence. If buying used, verify the production year and serial number. The parts are less widely available than Yamaha or Mercury, and the dual prop replacements are expensive. Budget for that. What you save in fuel, you may spend on proprietary props over the life of the motor. The DF300B is the right motor for the owner who prioritizes fuel efficiency, stability, and low-speed control above all else. It is a specialist, and within its specialty, nothing else comes close. From a motor that saves you money at the fuel dock, to a motor that rewrites the rules of what a high-horsepower outboard can be, now we move to something completely different. Number 2. Best. Mercury V10 Verado 350 and 400. Mercury spent nearly 2 decades relying on a supercharged 2.6-liter inline 6 to power its Verado line from 250 to 400 horsepower. That supercharged platform had known issues: complex fuel supply modules, hot restart problems, and a maintenance profile that made independent mechanics nervous. When Mercury retired that engine and replaced it with the naturally aspirated 5.7-liter V10, the boating world held its breath. The result exceeded expectations. The V10 Verado 350 and 400 are the quietest outboards in their class. At idle, you genuinely cannot tell if the engine is running without looking at the gauges. Underwater exhaust routing keeps noise below the waterline, and the advanced midsection mounting system isolates vibration from the hull. Mercury tested decibel levels in the low 60s at idle. That is quieter than a normal conversation. The V10 runs on 87-octane fuel through a closed-loop fuel system with advanced range optimization. A quad installation of V10 400s on a Boston Whaler 380. Outrage hit 68.5 miles per hour at 6,350 revolutions per minute during press testing. 0 to 30 miles per hour in under 8 seconds. Those are supercar-adjacent numbers on a 38-foot fishing boat. Weight is the V10's competitive advantage against Yamaha's XTO. The V10 400 weighs roughly 668 pounds. The Yamaha 425 XTO weighs 952 pounds. That is nearly 300 pounds of difference per engine. On a triple or quad installation, you are talking about half a ton of weight saved on the transom, which translates directly into speed, fuel economy, and how the boat rides in a seaway. Service intervals sit at 100 hours for minor and 300 hours for major, same as the old L6 platform. Mercury's dealer network is the largest in the marine industry, so finding warranty service or routine maintenance is straightforward in most markets. The V10 is not perfect. Early adopters reported cosmetic paint peeling on some lower units, along with minor trim and rigging issues that sometimes required dealer attention. One owner running a quad V10 400 setup documented problems with 3 of the 4 engines within the first 9 days, including a coolant pressure alarm and oil seepage. Stories like that understandably raised concerns for buyers considering one of the first production batches, especially when you are dealing with multiple engines and the cost of a full installation. But those reports have become less common as production matured and dealers became more familiar with the platform. Among owners putting 50 or more hours on the engines, the broader consensus is that the V10s perform exceptionally well once the initial setup, calibration, and installation issues are sorted out. If you are repowering or building new in the 350 to 425 horsepower range, the V10 Verado is the motor to beat. And then there is the motor that does not need to beat anyone, because it has been winning for over a decade. And then there is this. Number 1. Best. Yamaha F300 V6, 4.2 liters. The Yamaha F300 is not the newest outboard on the market. It is not the most powerful. It is not the lightest, the cheapest, or the most technically exotic. It is the best, and it is the best for the reason that matters most in boating. It works, every time, for years, without drama. The 4.2-liter V6 platform has been in production long enough that every failure mode has been discovered, documented, and engineered out. Yamaha certified technicians exist in every coastal market on the planet. Parts are in stock at every major marine distributor. If something breaks at a remote island in the Bahamas, someone within boat range can fix it. That infrastructure advantage is not something you find on a spec sheet, but it is the thing that saves your trip, your season, or your sanity. The F300 uses plasma-fused cylinder walls instead of conventional steel liners. The cylinders are 60% harder than steel, which allows larger bores in a compact block, reduces internal friction, and improves heat transfer. The result is a motor that weighs 253 kilograms, which is lighter than most competitors at this horsepower, while producing strong torque across the entire RPM band. Holeshot is quick. Mid-range pull is smooth. Top end is clean. No turbo lag. No supercharger whine. No hybrid transition jerkiness. The latest F300 models include integrated digital electric steering, eliminating hydraulic steering lines entirely. The thrust-enhancing reverse exhaust system reroutes exhaust underwater during reverse operation, giving you significantly more backing power without cavitation. If you have ever tried to back a 26-foot center console off a beach in crosswind, that feature alone is worth the upgrade. Fuel economy is competitive with everything in the class. Yamaha's EFI calibration is mature and precise, delivering consistent burns whether you are trolling at 800 RPM or running wide open at 5,800. The alternator produces up to 70 amps of charging power, which keeps modern electronic suites running without supplemental battery chargers. Resale value is the final argument, and it is a strong one. Yamaha outboards have a reputation for holding their value exceptionally well, and that matters when you eventually decide to sell or trade the boat. A 3-year-old F300 with 300 hours can still command a surprisingly high percentage of its original purchase price, something that would make most car manufacturers jealous. Buyers are willing to pay a premium for a used Yamaha because they know the brand, trust the reliability, and expect parts and service to remain readily available. That retained value changes the math on the original purchase. You may pay more upfront, but a larger portion of that money comes back when you sell, reducing your true cost of ownership well below what the initial sticker price suggests. The F300 is not going to turn heads at the boat show. Nobody is going to walk down the dock and photograph your engine cowling. It is the motor that starts when you turn the key, runs clean all day, brings you home in rough weather, and does it again next weekend without complaint. In boating, that is not boring. That is everything. Liked this deep dive? Hit subscribe and join us for the next investigation.